You're not overweight, you exercise occasionally, you don't eat that much sugar, and yet something feels off. Maybe you're exhausted by 2 p.m. even after a full night's sleep. Maybe your vision blurs for a few seconds and then clears up like nothing happened. Maybe you get headaches that come out of nowhere. Maybe you're hungrier than you used to be, even right after eating a meal. You went to your doctor, they ran some tests, they said everything looks fine. Maybe a little high, but nothing to worry about yet. Here's what they didn't tell you. That nothing to worry about yet might be the most dangerous phrase in modern medicine. Because right now, today, over 98 million Americans have pre-diabetes. That's 1 in 3 adults, and 8 out of 10 of them have absolutely no idea. No warning label, no obvious symptoms, no alarm going off. Just quiet, invisible damage happening inside your body every single day. And here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Pre-diabetes doesn't just raise your risk of diabetes. It is already damaging your heart, your kidneys, your eyes, your nerves, and your brain right now, before a single doctor calls it diabetes. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes showing you exactly what's happening inside your body if you're over 40, what the real warning signs look like that most doctors completely miss, and what you can do starting today to stop this before it becomes irreversible.
Stay with me, because what you're about to learn could genuinely change the direction of your health. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now. Tell me your age and one symptom from this list that you've experienced. Afternoon fatigue, blurry vision, constant hunger, belly fat that won't move, or tingling in your hands or feet. I read every single comment, and I want to know how many of you are dealing with this silently. And hit subscribe, because every week I share exactly this kind of information, the stuff that falls through the cracks of a 10-minute doctor's appointment. Let me tell you about a man named Robert. Robert was 47 years old, active job, decent diet, no family history of diabetes. He went in for a routine checkup, and his fasting blood sugar came back at 112. His doctor said, "You're a little high, watch what you eat, come back in a year." Robert went home, forgot about it, and kept living his life. 3 years later, Robert started noticing that his feet felt strange at night. Not painful exactly, just buzzing. Then his eyesight started fluctuating. Then he got his blood work done again, and this time the number was 161. Full diabetes, in 3 years, with 0 warnings along the way. But here's what Robert told me when I spoke with him. I had warnings, I just didn't know they were warnings. That's the crisis we're talking about today. Pre-diabetes is not a waiting room. It is not a harmless middle ground between healthy and sick. It is an active disease state where real damage is occurring in real time to real organs. Research now shows that by the time blood sugar reaches pre-diabetic levels, up to 50% of nerve damage may already be underway. Heart disease risk is already elevated. Kidney filtration is already beginning to decline. This is not a future problem. This is a now problem. So why don't more people know about it? Because the medical system is built around treating disease, not preventing it. A fasting blood sugar of 112 doesn't trigger medication. It doesn't trigger a specialist referral. It triggers advice to watch your diet and come back next year. And most people do exactly what Robert did. They go home and forget about it. That gap between a slightly high number and a full diagnosis is where lives change direction, and almost nobody is watching that gap closely enough. Let's change that right now. To understand pre-diabetes, you need to understand what blood sugar actually does inside your body. When you eat, your body breaks food down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream. Your pancreas releases a hormone called insulin, which acts like a key. It unlocks your cells and allows glucose to enter and be used as energy. This system works beautifully when everything is balanced. But here's what happens over time, especially after 40, especially with modern eating patterns. Your cells start to get overwhelmed. Insulin knocks on the door of your cells again and again after every meal, after every snack, after every sweetened coffee. Eventually, the cells start ignoring the knock. This is called insulin resistance. When cells resist insulin, glucose has nowhere to go. It stays in the bloodstream. Blood sugar rises. The pancreas panics and pumps out even more insulin, trying to force the door open. That works for a while. Blood sugar levels on a basic test might even look normal. But underneath the surface, your pancreas is working 5 times harder than it should, and insulin levels are chronically elevated. And that elevated insulin is its own kind of poison. High insulin promotes fat storage, especially around the abdomen. It drives inflammation throughout the body. It interferes with hormones. It disrupts sleep. It accelerates cellular aging. And the blood sugar that does manage to enter the bloodstream stays elevated just long enough, just often enough to start burning through the walls of your blood vessels like slow acid. This is why pre-diabetes damages so many systems at once. The eyes are affected because the tiny blood vessels behind the retina are fragile and highly sensitive to glucose spikes. The kidneys are affected because they are constantly filtering blood, and elevated glucose increases the pressure and chemical stress on the filtration system. The nerves are affected because nerve fibers are long, thin, and dependent on a precise chemical environment. Repeated glucose spikes disrupt that environment and damage the protective coating around nerves. The heart is affected because elevated blood sugar promotes arterial inflammation and plaque buildup. And the brain is affected because the brain runs almost entirely on glucose. But glucose toxicity damages the very neurons responsible for memory, focus, and emotional stability. All of this before you ever get a diabetes diagnosis. Now let's talk about what this actually looks like in real life, because pre-diabetes doesn't announce itself with a loud alarm. It whispers, and most of those whispers get blamed on aging, stress, or just being busy. Here are the real warning signs. See how many sound familiar. You feel fine in the morning, but somewhere between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m., your energy falls off a cliff. You feel heavy, foggy, almost drugged. You want coffee or something sweet just to function. This is not normal aging. This is a blood sugar crash following a midday glucose spike. Your body pushed out too much insulin after lunch, glucose dropped too fast, and now your brain is running on fumes. Many people experience this daily and assume it's just how life is after 40. It is not. You finish a full meal, and within an hour or two, you're hungry again. Not a little peckish, genuinely hungry, sometimes almost urgently so.
This happens because when cells are insulin resistant, glucose can't get inside efficiently. Your cells are starving, even when blood sugar is technically elevated. They send hunger signals to your brain, demanding more fuel. So you eat more. Blood sugar spikes again. Insulin surges again, and the cycle repeats. This one frustrates people enormously. They cut calories, they exercise, the belly fat stays. Elevated insulin is a fat storage hormone. It tells your body to hold on to fat, especially visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat that wraps around organs. As long as insulin remains chronically elevated, the body resists releasing that fat no matter how hard you work. If you've been struggling with stubborn belly fat that simply won't move despite effort, insulin resistance may be the reason. This one gets dismissed almost universally. People assume they need a new glasses prescription. Sometimes that's true, but intermittent blurry vision that clears up on its own is also a hallmark symptom of blood sugar fluctuation. As blood sugar rises, it pulls fluid into the lens of the eye, temporarily changing its shape and focus. When sugar drops, vision clears. This back and forth can be so subtle that people live with it for years without connecting it to blood sugar.
This is a sign that nerve damage may already be beginning. Remember what we discussed about how glucose spikes affect nerve tissue. By the time you feel tingling, the damage has likely been building quietly for months or even years. Many people over 40 report this symptom and are told it's poor circulation or stress or just getting older. Sometimes it is those things, but it is also one of the earliest detectable signs of pre-diabetic nerve involvement. Look at the back of your neck. Look at your armpits or the insides of your elbows. Do you notice any areas of skin that appear darker, velvety, or slightly thicker than the surrounding skin? This condition is called acanthosis nigricans, and it is directly caused by elevated insulin signaling in the skin. It is one of the most overlooked visible signs of insulin resistance. Dermatologists often treat it as a cosmetic issue. It is a metabolic warning sign. When blood sugar rises, the kidneys work harder to filter excess glucose out through urine. More urination means more fluid loss. More fluid loss triggers thirst. Many people chalk this up to drinking too much coffee or not enough water. If you're waking up more than once a night to urinate, or if you feel thirsty in a way that doesn't fully resolve after drinking, this pattern deserves attention. Elevated blood sugar impairs immune function and reduces circulation to small blood vessels near the skin. Wounds that would have healed in a few days in your 30s now take a week or two. Small cuts look angrier and stay longer. This is your immune system and vascular system both showing the strain of chronic glucose elevation.
Let me tell you about a woman named Patricia. She was 52, relatively healthy, slightly overweight, but not dramatically so. She had been experiencing afternoon crashes, belly fat she couldn't lose, and tingling in her left foot that she'd had for almost a year. She was also getting up twice a night to use the bathroom. She mentioned these things to her doctor at different times, in different appointments. Each one got its own separate explanation. The fatigue was attributed to perimenopause. The tingling was called circulation. The nighttime urination was blamed on fluid intake before bed. Nobody connected the dots. Nobody ran a full insulin panel. Nobody looked at these symptoms as a single picture. When Patricia finally had comprehensive blood sugar testing done, her fasting glucose was 118 and her A1C, a 3-month average blood sugar measure, was 6.1, solidly pre-diabetic, with early nerve involvement already underway. She had been pre-diabetic for years, in plain sight, completely missed. Here's something that most people don't realize about standard diabetes screening. The typical fasting glucose test gives you one number, a snapshot, your blood sugar at one moment in time after you haven't eaten for 8 hours. But blood sugar is not a static number. It rises and falls throughout the day based on what you eat, when you eat, how much you move, how stressed you are, and how well you slept. A fasting number of 95, technically normal, could belong to someone whose blood sugar spikes to 200 after every meal and stays elevated for 3 to 4 hours before coming back down. Those post-meal spikes are where most of the daily damage occurs, and a standard fasting test misses them completely.
There are 3 tests that give a much clearer picture of what's actually happening. The first is the fasting glucose test, the standard one. Anything from 100 to 125 is considered pre-diabetic, but even a number between 90 and 100 that's trending upward year over year deserves attention. The second is the A1C test. This measures the percentage of hemoglobin coated with glucose over the past 3 months. A1C between 5.7 and 6.4 indicates pre-diabetes. This test is more accurate than a single fasting measurement because it reflects an average over time. The third, and most revealing, is the fasting insulin test. This measures how much insulin your pancreas is producing just to keep your blood sugar in the normal range.
Most conventional doctors don't order this test routinely, but it can reveal insulin resistance years before blood sugar itself climbs into pre-diabetic territory. A person with a fasting glucose of 88, perfectly normal, could have a fasting insulin of 25, which indicates severe insulin resistance already in progress. Their blood sugar looks fine because their pancreas is working overtime to keep it that way. That overtime eventually burns out, and when it does, blood sugar climbs fast. Ask your doctor specifically for a fasting insulin test. If they're unfamiliar with why you're asking, that's a conversation worth having. Here's where I want to be very direct with you, because this is the part that actually matters. Pre-diabetes is reversible. Not manageable, not slowed down, reversed. Studies consistently show that lifestyle changes are more effective at reversing pre-diabetes than any medication available. But the window for reversal is not infinite. The longer blood sugar remains elevated, the more the pancreas fatigues and the harder reversal becomes. So here is your action plan. Practical, specific, and starting now.
This is the single highest impact change you can make. Research from Cornell University and other institutions has shown that the sequence in which you eat food dramatically affects the blood sugar response to that meal. Eating vegetables and protein first before any carbohydrates reduces post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 40%. The fiber from vegetables slows digestion. The protein triggers a slower insulin response. By the time carbohydrates enter, the system is primed to handle them much more gently. Start every meal with vegetables or protein, always. This one change alone can produce measurable A1C improvements within 90 days. Not a long walk, not a gym session, 10 minutes, that's all. Muscle tissue is the largest consumer of glucose in your body. When muscles are active, they absorb glucose directly without needing insulin. A 10-minute walk after eating activates those muscles during the exact window when blood sugar is rising from your meal. Studies show that a 10-minute post-meal walk reduces blood sugar spikes more effectively than a single 30-minute walk done at another time of day. If you do nothing else after reading this, do this. Walk for 10 minutes after lunch and dinner. Orange juice, apple juice, sweetened iced tea, sports drinks, smoothies made with fruit and no fiber. These are among the fastest-acting blood sugar spikers in existence. Liquid sugar has no fiber to slow its absorption. It enters the bloodstream almost immediately after consumption. The resulting spike is sharp and damaging. And because it's liquid, it doesn't trigger the same fullness signals that solid food does. So insulin surges and then crashes, leaving you hungry again quickly. Whole fruit eaten after a meal is dramatically different from fruit juice. The fiber in whole fruit slows absorption significantly, but juice removes that protection entirely.
This one swap, replacing any daily juice or sweetened drink with water or unsweetened sparkling water, can reduce average blood sugar meaningfully within weeks. This one gets overlooked almost universally, and it is critically important. Poor sleep directly impairs insulin sensitivity. A single night of less than 6 hours of sleep can temporarily reduce insulin sensitivity by 25%. Chronically poor sleep keeps the body in a low-grade stress state, elevating cortisol, which raises blood sugar even in the absence of food. You cannot outrun bad sleep with good diet. If you are sleeping poorly, managing blood sugar becomes significantly harder regardless of what else you do. Address sleep as a priority, not an afterthought. This is important to understand correctly. The goal is not a zero-carb diet. The goal is to reduce the speed and volume of glucose entering the bloodstream at any given time. Refined carbohydrates, white bread, white rice, crackers, pastries, breakfast cereals, pasta made from refined flour, break down into glucose rapidly because the fiber and protein that would slow that breakdown have been removed during processing.
Replacing these with slower digesting alternatives, whole grains, legumes, vegetables, dramatically reduces the glucose spike from each meal. You don't have to eat perfectly, you have to eat consistently better. Small, sustainable changes to daily carbohydrate quality matter more than dramatic short-term restrictions that don't last. Ask your doctor for 3 specific numbers at your next appointment: fasting glucose, A1C, and fasting insulin. If any of these are trending in the wrong direction, even within the normal range, you now know what to do about it. You don't need a diagnosis to start protecting yourself. You need awareness. And if you haven't had blood work done in over a year, make the appointment this week, not next month, this week. Let me tell you about one more person. His name was Daniel, 44 years old. He came across information like this, recognized 6 of the warning signs in himself, and asked his doctor for a full panel. His fasting glucose was 109. His A1C was 5.8. His fasting insulin was 19. All pre-diabetic indicators. His doctor suggested monitoring and follow-up in a year. Daniel didn't wait a year. He started walking after every meal. He removed juice from his diet. He changed the order he ate his food. He cut out his nightly crackers and cheese and replaced it with a handful of nuts and vegetables. 6 months later, his fasting glucose was 91. His A1C dropped to 5.4. His fasting insulin came down to 7. He didn't take medication. He didn't follow an extreme diet. He just understood what was happening and made consistent changes that fit into his actual life. That's what's possible. I want to leave you with something important.
Prediabetes is not a character flaw. It is not the result of laziness or weakness. It is the predictable biological consequence of living in a modern food environment with a body that evolved in a very different one. The foods that dominate our grocery stores, our restaurants, and our daily habits were designed for convenience and taste, not for the long-term health of your pancreas. Understanding this is not about blame. It's about power. Because once you understand what's happening, you have real options. Not miracle cures, not expensive treatments, real practical changes that have been shown again and again in research to reverse the trajectory of this disease. You are not helpless here, and this is not just about avoiding diabetes. It's about your energy, your mental clarity, your weight, your sleep, your heart, your nerves, your independence. All of those things are connected to this one underlying issue. If this video opened your eyes, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with the person in your life who's been told their blood sugar is a little high but nothing to worry about. Share it with someone over 40 who has belly fat they can't explain, or fatigue that doesn't make sense, or tingling they've been ignoring. That information could change the direction of their health. Comment below with your age and tell me which warning sign surprised you the most. I want to know. Hit the like button if this gave you something valuable. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And remember, your body has been sending you signals. Now you know how to read them.